Hi, I'm Dwayne Brown. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, U.S. Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel stopped at Camp Pendleton today. His message to servicemen and women.
Plus, the pros and cons of the idea of in-country processing for Central American immigrants seeking asylum or refugee status. I'm Peggy Pico with that conversation. And how to protect your family against the West Nile virus, and how the county can help you reduce mosquitoes around your home.
She spent 18 years behind bars for killing her pimp. Now she's free and talking exclusively to us about life after prison. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Hi, good evening. Thanks for joining us. More help is on the way tonight for thousands of people in northern Iraq who are fleeing Islamic militant forces. European nations are promising to send helicopters and supplies today. A humanitarian operation turned deadly as a U.S. military chopper providing aid crashed, killing the pilot. Officials say it happened after too many civilians tried to jump on board. A senior U.S. defense official says the Pentagon is considering sending more military advisors to Iraq. There are currently about 250 military personnel there serving in advisory roles. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel is in San Diego visiting troops at Camp Pendleton. He's also talking about the crisis in Iraq. KPBS reporter Matt Bowler joins us from the newsroom with more on Hagel's visit. We know Camp Pendleton Marines played a significant role in Iraq and Afghanistan. Matt, what did Hagel have to say when he took the podium?
Well, Hagel told the crowd of the Marines that the administration isn't going to send troops into Iraq at the levels like they did in the past, but that there are military advisors in northern Iraq right now. He reiterated that these 130 advisors are not there in a combat capacity, and they're only there supposed to advise. However, the secretary did describe the government of Iraq as being under a threat from one of the world's most brutal forces, and he was, of course, talking about ISIL.
And where did the secretary go on his trip?
Well, Hagel's trip started with stops at the U.S. European Command in Germany, then on to India to help with preparations for their new Prime Minister's upcoming American visit, and finally Australia for the annual meeting between Australian and American foreign affairs ministers, diplomats, senior officials. All this before coming to Camp Pendleton today.
Quite a lot of ground to cover. Is there any one issue that seemed to have stood out?
Well, all along the way, American interests in the Asian Pacific were of a special focus. Just before coming to San Diego, Defense Secretary Hagel and Secretary of State John Kerry were in Sydney and signed the U.S.-Australia Force Posture Agreement. This agreement lays out the legal framework for sending more U.S. Marines to Darwin, Australia on a rotating deployment. It's all part of how the American defense strategy is focusing more on the Asian Pacific region. However, many question if the United States is going to be able to keep this focus on the region with tensions heating back up again in Iraq.
KPBS reporter Matt Bowler. A federal grand jury issued a new indictment today against Mexican billionaire Jose Susimo Azano Matsura and two alleged co-conspirators accused of illegally giving to San Diego political campaigns. The new charges include bribery, record falsification, and illegal firearms possession. The indictment details about $600,000 in allegedly illegal donations and 20 instances in which the defendants falsified campaign finance records. Of course, it's illegal for foreigners to contribute to U.S. elections. The San Diego company behind an experimental Ebola treatment has exhausted its supply of the drug. KPBS science reporter David Wagner joins us now to discuss how the drug has been used in the outbreak currently spreading through West Africa. Tell us more about this experimental drug, David, and who's received it so far.
Sure. So the drug is called ZMapp. It's made by a small local company called MAP Biopharmaceutical. And yesterday they said that their last available samples have been donated to West Africa, where they will treat infected Liberian doctors. Last week, ZMapp was given to two American health workers, and now they're both recovering from this highly fatal virus. But we can't say whether or not the drug helped them survive. ZMapp was also donated to an infected Spanish priest, but he has since died.
And how did the company decide who got the drug and who didn't? I know there's been some controversy over this.
Sure. Well, MAP seems to have taken a first-come, first-served type approach, but the bigger question about who to treat first with unproven drugs in a crisis is a very tricky one. A lot of people have questioned why 2 Americans got this potentially life-saving drug before Africans did. But a research ethicist I interviewed said, imagine the drug had been given to Africans first and had ended up not working, or even making their disease worse. People then might have asked why such a risky drug was tried on Africans before Americans. So there's no easy answer, but a panel convened by the World Health Organization said today that, yes, it is ethical to use experimental drugs in this outbreak, as long as patients know what they're getting into and results from their treatment will be shared with researchers.
And where do we go from here?
Well, it's going to take months to produce more ZMapp, so other companies are now offering their experimental drugs too. Supplies are limited, though, and this outbreak is the worst on record already. It's killed more than 1,000 people throughout 4 countries. Quarantine and traditional care may be the only option for many of those infected.
KPBS science reporter David Wagner. The Marin County Sheriff's Office in the Bay Area has confirmed that Robin Williams committed suicide by hanging himself and say the actor had been seeking treatment for depression. Here in San Diego, the Challenged Athletes Foundation is remembering Williams, a longtime supporter of the organization who participated in 11 triathlon challenge events. The foundation helps disabled athletes, many of them wounded military veterans. The comedian was a big supporter of U.S. troops. For more than a decade, Williams went on USO tours, entertaining servicemen and women. He visited troops in 12 foreign countries, making 3 stops in Iraq and Afghanistan. Williams also had a personal connection to the military. His father served aboard an aircraft carrier in World War II. California could become the first in the country to require kill switches on smartphones. The anti-theft technology would make a stolen device inoperable. Lawmakers passed the bill Monday, and it's now headed to the governor's desk. A wireless industry group opposes the measure. Another bill awaiting Governor Brown's signature has to do with mugshots posted online. That measure would ban websites from charging removal fees. There are almost 80 commercial sites in the country that post mugshots and offer to take them down for a price. The bill's author says it's an issue of fairness.
They're taking advantage of people in some cases who were erroneously arrested, some never charged with a crime, and it's really a difficult situation. And I think everyone kind of wanted to rally around that because it's an issue of fairness, and we want to give everyone an opportunity. And by having that Google or that Bing search showing up a mugshot is the first thing that's not helping anyone, and it can only hurt.
State legislature is expected to weigh in on a package of bills aimed at combating human trafficking. The bills authored by Senator Marty Block of San Diego would recognize human trafficking as a gang crime, streamline prosecution of those cases, and hand down tougher penalties to gang members caught trafficking. Coming up later in the program, we will hear from a survivor of human trafficking. Should the U.S. process Central American immigrants in their own countries? Peggy Pico has the pros and cons of that idea being considered in Washington.
Tens of thousands of Central American children await hearings in the U.S. to determine whether they have a legal right to protection and asylum. But what if the U.S. screened potential Central American refugees before they made the dangerous 1,000-mile trek to the U.S.? Here with further details are my guests, KPBS Fronteras reporter Jill Replical and Ev Mead with the University of San Diego's Transborder Institute. Welcome back.
Thanks.
No, Jill, you've done this story on the idea of processing potential Central American refugees before they get to the U.S. What would that actually look like?
Well, first I should say that it's very much in the idea stage, I think, as far as we know. But the plan would be, a draft proposal was shared with the New York Times a couple of weeks ago. And so children would be interviewed by American immigration officials in their home countries. This would start in Honduras as a pilot project. And they would be screened for criteria. We would set some kind of criteria for eligibility. And then there might be a resettlement center set up in the region where children could be safely until they can be safely transported to the U.S.
Do groups that are identify themselves as anti-illegal immigration groups, do they support this?
Not the ones that I talked to. They think that it would just allow more people to apply, and I think that it would probably increase the number of people coming to the U.S., and they say that kids would still come to the border anyway.
Ev, do you agree with that take on it? Do you think it could be sort of advertising?
I don't think so. I mean, I think our historical experience with this is they tend to be either very narrowly tailored towards particular groups or a particular crisis, or if they're actually working under asylum law, the process is extremely rigorous and difficult to prove. So I don't think it would change that. What it might change is the journey.
Well, you've been following the influx of accompanied children for a long time now into the U.S. from Central America. Mm-hmm. How do you think it would? Change the journey?
Well, it could change the journey by simply cutting off the part that goes through Mexico right now, which is where we know there's an enormous amount of exploitation of children. We know that girls are often raped. We know there's extortion and kidnapping, all kinds of terrible things that go on that journey from Mexico's southern border to the northern border. There's also the association with criminals. The fact that this puts money into the hands of smugglers. So if we could take some measures so that we could adjudicate these kids in country and they wouldn't have to make that journey at all, that would be a great thing. Unfortunately, we just don't know exactly how this proposed plan is going to work. We don't know the criteria, so it's hard to judge it.
Well, I know, Jill, a similar kind of processing was used in the 1990s when thousands of Haitian refugees were attempting to seek asylum in the U.S. How did that program work out?
The bases were sort of similar to what we're talking about now. And it's interesting because if you talk to people in the human rights and sort of refugee rights community, they're split on whether or not this was a good thing or whether or not it could be a good thing in Central America. It was set up for elites. Some people would say poor Haitians had a hard time applying. They had to, they had to be literate. They had to fill out forms. They had to feel safe enough to go stand in line at a processing center, and then they had to wait in the country, potentially facing danger while they waited. It did cut down on the number of people getting to U.S. soil because we combined that program with a very strong interdiction program on the high seas, and the Coast Guard basically all the Haitian boats and rafts that it found, it summarily sent people back to Haiti and told them to get in line.
Well, Ev, do you think we could glean some lessons from that program and actually make this in-country process program work more successfully in Central America?
Sure, I think we could. I mean, it has to do at the bottom with what our intent is. Is our intent really to protect children, to uphold the standard of what a refugee is under international law, or are we just trying to do our immigration enforcement abroad? And if it's the latter, which is what I think kind of happened with Haiti, lots of people applied, but the grant rate was really low, and it seemed, as Jill said, it didn't necessarily get the people who were most in need. We've had this problem with similar projects around the country. Around the world from other countries. So, like Soviet Jews and evangelical Christians, or the program that we have with Cuba, which can admit up to 5,000 people a year. They've never really been targeted at a broad swath of protection. They've been targeting political groups that suit our policy interests. They may also provide some humanitarian good while they're doing that, but they're really a policy question, not a rights question.
How many Central Americans might actually seek and qualify for refugee status in the U.S.?
It's really, really tough to say. I mean, we know that, of the kids who've come, it could be thousands, but it could be less. Again, it really depends on the categories. Every time we try to make predictions with this stuff, when the Refugee Act passed in 1980, the drafters thought it was going to bring 2,000 to 5,000 people a year. There were 26,000 applications the first year. So that could happen. Or they could design a narrowly tailored one and open it up to what they think would be a very different size group. It could end up attracting a very small number of people because it's very exclusive by definition.
Well, I have to say that we have a lot more online about this. KPBS.org, KPBS Frontiers reporter Jill Repplico and Ev Mead, USD's Transborder Institute. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
City of San Diego could be doing more to boost recycling. A new audit shows only about a quarter of trash is recycled every year. It recommends the city revise contracts with private garbage haulers who currently aren't required to reach minimum recycling rates. The city hopes changes will help extend the life of the Miramar landfill, which is set to be completely full by 2025. Los Angeles Clippers officially have a new owner tonight. Former Microsoft CEO Steve Ballmer is replacing Donald Sterling in a record $2 billion sale. Sterling has been in a legal battle to keep the Clippers since he was banned for life by the NBA after a recording surfaced of him making racist comments. Now, Sterling originally paid $12 million for the Clippers back in 1981. He moved the team from San Diego to Los Angeles a few years later. Sara Cruzan spent 20 years in prison for killing her pimp, and for many of those years she pretended she was free. Actual liberty for the 36-year-old came last Halloween after a 7-year legal fight. KPBS investigative reporter Amita Sharma recently sat down with Cruzan, who said the first thing she did was visit Santa Monica Beach.
I dove into the water, in the ocean. All the trauma, the experience of going through the incarceration prior to being incarcerated, you know, those kind of things. I just wanted to start anew.
Cruzan is 10 months into her freedom. Despite 2 decades of imprisonment, laughter comes easily. A twinkle sits in her eyes, and freedom's thrill remains.
I guess I would say it's like waking up every day and feeling like Christmas for me, because there's just so much to choose from, and it's amazing to be able to just go.
I think these pictures of you like at the Renaissance Fair.
Options had been a rarity in Cruzan's life. Her mother abused her. Her mother's boyfriends molested her. When she was 11, a notorious neighborhood pimp named Gigi Howard noticed her walking from school. He pulled up in his red Mustang and offered to buy her ice cream. Cruzan's lawyers say Howard raped her when she was 13 and forced her into prostitution. For a time, she lived in San Diego with family, but at 16, the attorneys say Cruzan dated a boy whose ex-con uncle ordered her to murder Howard and threatened to kill her family if she didn't. She complied. Cruzan shot Howard dead in a motel room.
At first, I didn't really know how to feel. All I knew was that I was extremely sorry for what I had done the minute it had happened.
A Riverside jury convicted Cruzan. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The next several years were searing, Cruzan says. She swung from anger to grief to depression and contemplated suicide.
There were times when I thought, well, I don't want to do this. I don't want to grow old hair. I can't do it. I can't do it, you know?
Then came acceptance.
I came to terms with it. I embraced it. And instead of seeing it as a fear, I just took it. I just, you know, embraced all the feelings of it. And then while I did that, there was some kind of like relief within myself.
Curiosity about her prison peers set in.
When you have to be like forced to sit at a table with someone who killed her kid, and you're sitting there eating, it's like, do you just stay isolated, or do you kind of push back the judgment and say, okay, I can't think of that. What happened? What caused this person to feel this way, to do that?
She says she did just that, and answers appeared.
Drugs, desperation. A lot of it had to do with men, you know, wanting to be accepted and loved.
Understanding turned into compassion toward the man she killed, the man who prostituted her as a child.
And then I think about what happened to him that made him make those decisions in his life, you know? I mean, no one wakes up and say, hey, I'm going to go traffic children.
Cruzan also views her mother differently now, not as her first abuser, but as a woman with her own demons.
But God bless the child that's got his own.
Today, Cruzan spends time with friends and family, but lives alone in Orange County while listening to her favorite Billie Holiday songs. She's charting the next chapter of her life. She wants to earn her bachelor's degree, be a social worker, help sex trafficking victims, and advocate for youth in prisons with cases similar to hers. She says it shouldn't have taken a team of 6 lawyers and 7 years to win justice for her. Tomorrow, 2 of those lawyers talk about the struggles Cruzan's case posed.
We tried so many different avenues. We did the clemency, we did the habeas petition. We got shot down in the trial court in Riverside. We got shot down by the Court of Appeal. We then went to the Supreme Court of the state of California. We went to the governor with a clemency petition. We were, trying everything we could.
Amita Sharma, KPBS News.
Someone at Lincoln High School had tuberculosis this spring and might have exposed others. County Health Agency says the sick person is undergoing treatment. TB symptoms include a persistent cough, fever, and night sweats. Free testing was provided to students today. Of course, we recently told you about a second bird testing positive for West Nile virus in El Cajon. Peggy Pico explains how a county program is showing folks how to protect themselves.
A 43-year-old Santee man was diagnosed with West Nile a few weeks ago. He had no symptoms and has recovered from the virus. But our unusual humid weather increases breeding grounds for mosquitoes that carry and spread the virus. Here with more on what's being done to track the virus and how to protect against it are my guests, West Nile specialist Dr. Steve Waterman with the Centers for Disease Control and Chris Conlon with the county's Environmental Vector Control Program. Welcome to Evening Edition.
Thank you.
Now, Dr. Waterman, you track viruses and diseases along the U.S.-Mexico border. What is West Nile?
West Nile is a virus that's transmitted by mosquitoes, and it's normally going from mosquitoes to birds, but it does get to humans occasionally. And most of the time it doesn't cause a problem. Most people don't have symptoms, but about 20% will develop a fever, and about 1% may develop an inflammation of the brain. So it can be quite serious, and it can be fatal.
And we're just looking at a frame here that's showing us kind of the cycle. Do mosquitoes get it from people and transfer it to people? Do they get it from a horse? How does the whole, walk us through the whole, how it gets to us?
The cycle is basically a bird-mosquito-bird cycle. So the birds become viremic or develop virus in their blood. The mosquitoes bite the birds, and then they transmit it to birds again. But every now and then mosquitoes will want to bite a human because they're close by.
And but we don't, can a human transfer it to a human?
No, humans can't transmit it. We're what are called dead-end hosts. That means it can't go from human to human.
I see. Now, Chris, what specific areas is the county targeting for tracking and abatement of West Nile virus and the mosquitoes that carry it?
We're actually tracking all areas of the county. I mean, because the birds can fly, mosquitoes can breed in any number of backyards. So it's really not something that's localized to just one area. So we have to track the whole county.
How do you track it?
We have a number of ways doing that. We know about all the big mosquito breeding sites that are around the county, so we test mosquitoes from those areas, and we also rely heavily on the general public to report dead birds of certain species like crows and jays, and we test those to see if they've died of West Nile virus, and that gives us an idea of how it's going.
And I understand there's a new app for that. People, if they find a dead bird, they can use this app?
Absolutely. So in addition to the old phone calls and emails, you now have an app where you can download, and you can use that to report birds as well.
And Dr. Waterman, who's most at risk of getting sick or dying from West Nile virus, and how do you protect against getting it?
Right. The people at highest risk are people older than 50 years of age, and also persons with chronic diseases like high blood pressure, diabetes, kidney disease. And those persons are more likely to get the severe form of illness and die from it. And so it's very important that people avoid mosquito bites. They typically bite most often at dawn and dusk, so wearing protective clothing, wearing mosquito repellents that contain DEET can help protect you against this disease, which can be fatal.
Now, is DEET okay for everyone to use, including babies? Somebody mentioned to me today they slather their baby in it.
Well, you can overdo DEET on a baby, but I think if you talk to your doctor and look up the CDC website, you can use modest amounts of DEET on small children.
All right. And the key to this, Chris, is getting rid of these breeding grounds. Where are some of the mosquito breeding grounds around the house specifically that if you don't have a pond, you may think you're okay, but there's other areas, correct?
There's all kinds of places that a typical backyard can breed mosquitoes. It could be a sagging tarp, any kids' toys, anything with a depression in it that'll hold water for a week or more has the potential to breed mosquitoes.
Now, I know the county's Fight the Bite program offers help to county residents. You told us, when should you call somebody for help for a mosquito problem to call you guys?
Anytime you've got an issue with mosquitoes, give us a call. We can inform you on what we've done in your area. If it sounds like it's something that we may not be aware of, we'll definitely send someone out there to have a look around and see what we can do.
And you actually offer fish for people.
Yeah, for those people who have permanent sources of water in their backyard, like bird baths or small fish ponds, things like that, yeah, we give away free mosquito fish, which will control the mosquitoes. And you can get those not only from our main office, but also from some external partners, which you can find on our website. There's links to all those places.
And there's pellets as well, but those people can buy.
Yeah, there's things called mosquito dunks, there's pellets, there are various types of basic insecticides that can be used for mosquitoes, and those can be purchased separately at various home improvement outlets.
Okay. And I did want to know, Dr. Waterman, since you're on the border, U.S.-Mexico border, looking at these kind of vector-borne diseases, are there any other right now that's sort of concern for us in our region?
Well, I think the main one would be a disease called Rocky Mountain Spotted Fever, which is another infectious disease transmitted by ticks. And stray dogs carry these ticks, and we've seen that disease as close as Mexicali and Imperial County. So another vector-borne disease to be concerned about in the region.
All right, and we have a lot more about that and also about West Nile virus on our website, kpbs.org. Dr. Steve Waterman and Chris Conlon, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Well, the forecast is calling for some relief from the sticky, humid weather starting tomorrow. That means morning clouds turning to sunshine along the coast, temperatures mostly in the upper 70s through Friday. Sunny and warm for the inland valleys as well, mid-80s for the next few days. Mountain areas will be clear, mostly in the low 80s. Chance of thunder showers actually in the desert tomorrow, then clearing with temperatures well above 100. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.